there guys, and welcome to this week's edition of M&A TV. Here is a sneak peek of what we have coming in today's show. Chris talks to paranormal author Craig Bryant in Paranormal Chat. We hear from Shell in this week's Meet the Team. And Fran will be telling you more about crystals in Fran's spiritual world. But this week we kick things off with our brand new, apparently haunted doll in Franny's Paranormal Adventures.
Hello and welcome to this brand new segment of the show. Now, as you may know, if you managed to watch our Facebook Live or watched it back on replay, we have a brand new item for the team. So if you didn't watch, let me introduce Franny, the doll. So Franny is allegedly a haunted doll, and a haunted doll is something that the team, mainly myself, has been looking forward to getting for quite some time. So we didn't want to just get any doll. We've been searching, checking out different listings on various websites, and eventually we picked out 3 that we liked. Well, I picked out 3 that I liked, that I felt drawn to, and I shared those with the rest of the team, and we nailed it down to 2. I missed out on 1, and so we ended up with Franny. So if you haven't already, go and check out the Facebook Live that I did this Saturday just gone, and you can hear some of the backstory on Franny. Franny is the name that a psychic medium gave the doll. Apparently that's the spirit that haunts her. However, we're unsure whether that's true. Our Fran doesn't seem to think that that's the name she gets, and a couple of other people who watched have also come up with different names that they felt as soon as they saw us. So we'll play that one by ear for now. For now, we're going to keep calling her Franny until we know anything different. So the plan is we're going to do various experiments with the doll to see if she is indeed haunted, and we'll obviously let you know what happens. So each week, hopefully, there'll be a short segment on the doll, what she's been up to, anything strange that's happened, and so on. Now, we've given her a little bit of a settling in period to begin with, so we haven't done really anything with her at the moment. She's been sitting on the table in the kitchen for most of the time that we've had her, and I have noticed the cat is very fond of her. So I'm going to post a picture here now. Now, every time I walk in the room, the cat seems to be sat next to her. So whether that's an indication that he's drawn to her for some reason, or it's just random, we don't know. But it's not something that it's not his normal behaviour anyway. So if she was a box or a carrier bag, those things he does love, and he will go and sit on them. But yeah, Hunter was a bit, that's the big dog, was a bit curious as well. He kept coming up and jumping up to have a good sniff of her. Hunter, come on, come up. Say hello to Hunter. Hi. Right, down now. Scrappy, as of yet, hasn't seen her, so there you go, have a good sniff. What do you reckon? So it'd be interesting to see if the dogs do act differently around the doll, because they're supposedly quite good at sensing spirits and things. Now, the first night we had her, we left her on this table. She's sitting on a little box. Because she's got sort of bent legs, so she needs to be sitting somewhere. So we'd left her sitting on this little box overnight, and I just got up to go to the toilet, and the kids were still awake. It wasn't particularly late. I think it was about 11:30, and I heard a bit of a crash down in the kitchen. Didn't really think anything of it, so I came down to have a look what was going on, and I'll show you a picture now of how I left the doll. And then when I went down, this is how I found her. So whether that was indeed paranormal, we don't know because we didn't have a camera on her at the time. But it was certainly strange. Since then, she's been sat perfectly fine on her box and hasn't moved once. So we did briefly leave a locked off camera on her. I say briefly, for about 5 hours whilst I was at work and Chris was in the office. We're still going through that footage, but at the moment we can't see that anything occurred. We left 2 EMF detectors with her. One did drain of battery, which is something that the doll is supposedly causes, is battery drain, but we don't think in this occasion it was the doll. We just put it down to the batteries were running low and we needed to change them. So if that happens again in the future, now that we have changed them, we can consider that possible paranormal activity. But at the moment, like I said, we'll just put that down to the batteries needed changing. Now, we'd love to know your thoughts on Franny. Do you get any sense, any feelings from her? Do you think that's really her name? Any experiments you think we should try with her also? Please let us know in the comments. I think the first experiment we are going to try is leaving a locked off camera on her again, but overnight this time. It was during the day last time, and there was a bit of, it was sunny outside, but the clouds were obviously altering the light coming into the window. So there was a bit of shadow play around the doll, but again, we put that down to the outdoor situation with the sun and everything. So the next time we leave her, it will be overnight whilst we're in bed. We'll probably lock her in the office and see what happens. So Hunter's making a racket, wants to play with his toys. So anyway, that's Franny. This is the new segment, and we look forward to doing more with the doll over the next coming weeks. See you soon. Say bye, Franny. Bye.
Well, what can I say about Franny? Looking forward to using her in our paranormal adventures. Our paranormal investigations. Hopefully we'll get some good results from her, and we look forward to hearing your comments about her when we get to release some videos and release some proper investigations with her in. So up next we have Paranormal Chat with Chris.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Chat. Now today's guest is an author with all sorts of interest in folklore, myths and legends, and of course the paranormal. So I sent him a bunch of questions for him to answer, to tell us a bit about himself and his experiences and what inspired him to write the book. So here he is and his answers. I give you Mr. Craig Bryant.
Hello, so my name's Craig Bryant, and I've been asked to give a short video for Paranormal Investigations by Chris, and just tell you a little bit about myself and also a little bit about a book that I've written, which we will get onto shortly. So I live in a small village called Chatburn, which is near Clitheroe in Lancashire. Very close to Pendle Hill, which is famous for the witch trials of 1612. And if you haven't read about the witch trials, it's a fascinating story. I lived in Accrington until I was about 38. That's a town that's roughly about 15 miles from here. I'm 53 now. I'm married with one son, married to Sarah, and our son James is 13, or as we now refer to him, Kevin the teenager. My hobbies, as well as the paranormal and gathering stories for my next book, I have an allotment, and I also enjoy running as well. I started running a couple of years ago, really just to lose a little bit of weight. A bit of middle-age spread was getting out of hand, and I ran the Manchester 10k last year and raised some money for the brain tumour charity. I'm not a member of any local paranormal group, although there are a few around, and I would quite like to get involved with some of them. But I just find it's amazing the number of people who are quite happy to talk to you about ghosts, the paranormal, their own personal experiences, or stories that they've heard from other people. So I've had an interest in the paranormal for a long time, ever since I was a child, really, and it was because my granddad, my maternal granddad, Bill, was a really good storyteller. And I remember as a child we used to sit in front of, they had an old range cooker. He lived in a typical East Lancashire 2 up 2 down terraced house. They're called terrace cottages now, but they were a terraced house in effect. And we used to sit in front of the old range cooker in the back room, with all the lights down low, and my granddad used to tell me ghost stories, which was probably quite frightening to a child of 5 or 6. But that's really where I got my sort of interest in the paranormal and in local legends and myths, and stories, of which there are an awful lot in East Lancashire. It's a very paranormal part of the world. Well, about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to write a book. I'd started discovering podcasts, paranormal podcasts, and paranormal radio shows, and listening to some of the guests that were on these podcasts made me think that I had some very interesting stories which I wanted to write about. Some of them were personal stories. Some of them were stories of family and friends, and some of them were stories that I sort of picked up along the way when I started talking to people and telling them that I was writing a book on the paranormal. And to my surprise, the number of people who said to me, "Oh, well, I've got a story to tell," happened an awful lot more than people that just sort of poo-pooed the idea that ghosts don't exist, which, you do get some people that say that. So I decided to write a book, and it's called The Shadow Man of Accrington. It's available, there you go. It's, as I say, it's a collection of stories that go back 30 years, right back to my first experience when I was in my late teens, and that was what I now term as the Shadow Man. It was a dark figure which I saw whilst I was working in an old working men's club, the old it was the Conservative Club in Accrington, actually, and that's the first story in the book. And then there are a number of other stories in there. Some of them are stories that I've picked up along the way over the last 30 years, and some of them are stories that family have told me. So, for instance, my wife Sarah, her family lived in a very haunted farmhouse for a number of years. Very old farmhouse, 16th century, one of the oldest farm buildings actually still standing in Lancashire, and they had a poltergeist. So it's stories like that, and there are also stories about local legends, local myths. There are stories of the Pendle Witches, which is a fascinating story. There's also the story of a haunted school. There's the story of a house which a lady who contacted me used to live in, which had so many different entities in it, and that was linked to a coal mine and a coal mining disaster, which happened in the late 1890s. So there are some very, very interesting stories in the book, and I'm extremely pleased with it, and it's got some very good reviews. I've been lucky enough to do a few radio interviews. This is the first video interview I've ever done, but I've done some radio interviews, and as I say, it's available on Amazon. I've also got a website, which is www.theshadowmanofaccrington.co.uk. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter, yeah, I'm always open to people contacting me with stories, their own personal experiences or things that they've heard about. I'm trying to get some material together now for another book, because there are so many fascinating stories out there that I do think that they need to be consigned to print so that people can read them and enjoy them, and thought-provoking stories, and scary ones as well. So what's the most exciting moment when I've been writing the book? Well, apart from finishing it, which I was quite excited about, there have been a number of occasions really where I've been both excited and scared at the same time, which is a strange experience. As I said before, the Shadow Man was the first real experience that I had, and that was quite a scary experience. But afterwards, it was, I suppose, exciting in the way, because I'd seen something which I hadn't expected to see, and the more I thought about it, the more I realised it was some sort of ghost. And it was only really with the advent of the internet that I started to be able to do some research. The book has been in the pipeline really for a number of years, and it was the fact that I'd just started listening to the paranormal podcasts and the radio shows that really sort of gave me that push to sit down in front of a computer and start writing the book. But I had all these ideas going around in my head for a long time. I was taken on a guided tour of a school when I started writing the book. I was contacted by a guy who worked at a local school, local secondary school, and I did some research into the school. The school itself has only been there for about 10 years. It's only been built in the last 10 years. And I did some research into what was there before. And I was taken on a guided tour by one of the caretakers at the school, and he told me stories, explained all the different things that had been going on. Some of the paranormal events were quite incredible. I didn't see anything when I was walking around myself, but I felt quite a lot of strange energy. And that was quite exciting. I think doing live investigations, actually going somewhere and investigating that particular place is really exciting. Most frightening experience. Don't really get frightened that easy. I think I was. I think probably the most frightening one really was. There's another story in the book when I was in my early 20s. I worked for a retail company called Curry's, who are still going at the moment, but at the time they had a lot of shops on the high street, and I worked at the shop in Oldham, which is no longer there. But it was a three-story building with a stock room up on the third floor, and the stock room had something really quite terrifying an entity, an energy, a really bad energy in there. And I felt it the first time I actually went up into the stock room, and it was a really oppressive, horrible feeling. That was frightening, because I didn't at the time understand why I felt the way that I did when I walked into the room. And it was only afterwards, when I was told about some of the things that had been seen up on the third floor, which I go talk about in the book. It was only at that point that I suddenly realised that I'd had these feelings for a reason, and I'd felt the way that I had when I walked into the room, because there was a dark energy there. And I think that was probably the first time that I realised that I could pick up on things like that. Some people are quite perceptive, and although I wouldn't say that I'm a medium, or I can talk to the spirits or talk to ghosts or anything like that, I do have this ability to be able to feel things when I go to a place, whether it be in a building or whether it's outside somewhere or something like that. So I do tend to get feelings about places, and I think that's because I'm quite perceptive and quite receptive to the paranormal. I'd love to continue researching, and in fact, as I say, I'm trying to get some more stories together for another book. One of the ideas that I have is a book on UFOs, because East Lancashire is also an area which has got an awful lot of UFO activity, and has had over the years. But I would like to write another book on the paranormal, and I'm slowly getting together some more stories from friends and family, and also from local people as well. And in fact, I've just discovered that there are two pubs in the village. One of the pubs I mention in the book, because there's an often seen ghost of a little boy in the pub, the Brown Cow. But there's also another pub called the Black Bull. It's obviously a very bovine theme for both pubs. But the Black Bull apparently was a mortuary at one stage, and there are a number of discontented spirits that still manifest themselves every now and then in that particular building. So that's something that I need to investigate when the pubs are back open after lockdown. So yeah, people can contact me through the website. People can contact me on Facebook, and I'm always more than happy to talk to people about their experiences, and if they're happy for me to put them in the book, as I did with the Shadow Man of Accrington book, then that's great. Do I have any dream adventures? I would probably like to visit Egypt, I think, and Egyptology is something that I think is fascinating. Again, I think it's very spiritual. I think you can look at it from a paranormal point of view. A lot of the myths and legends that grew up around Egypt, during the time of the pharaohs, I think is fascinating. There are quite a lot of places locally that I would love to be able to go in and visit and stay and explore more. We're very lucky now with the internet that we can do a lot more research than we used to be able to. Back when I first started having these experiences, there was no internet. It was very, very difficult to research places, buildings, look into the history of them, whereas now it's a lot easier. There are a number of places around East Lancashire which are famous for being haunted. We have a lot of stately homes. There's Samlesbury Hall, there's Turton Tower, there's Chingle Hall, which is reputedly, or was reputedly, one of the most haunted houses in Britain. but unfortunately now it's private residence, and I believe that the gentleman that owns it is not too welcoming of people who want to obviously go in and look around the house and investigate the ghostly goings on there. So that's a shame. That is somewhere that I would love to go to. I think the main thing, if you're interested in the paranormal, is understand that there are people out there who dismiss the paranormal out of hand, and you will meet some people who will say that it's a load of old rubbish. But my experience is that the vast majority of people that I've spoken to when I've either been gathering stories or telling people about the book, talking to people about the book, not necessarily who are in the paranormal sphere, most people are very receptive, very open-minded, and fascinated by the subject. I think that there is a ghost hunter in all of us. You only have to believe, you only have to have an open mind, and if you want to write a book about it, if you want to write a book about your experiences, do it. It takes time, and it's not easy, I must admit. It's been a tough 12 months really with the book, getting it right, getting it proofread, sending copies off to publishers, most of which have come back with really good feedback. But being an unpublished author means that it's very difficult to actually get your first book published. Once you do that, it can snowball, but getting that book published for the first time is very, very difficult, and it can be quite soul destroying. I've decided to self-publish on Amazon. There are other places that you can self-publish as well, other websites, and it's a way of getting your foot in the door. And my only advice really to anybody who wants to get into the paranormal, and if they want to write a book or start doing radio interviews, you've got to be very, very good at advertising yourself, and you've got to be very good at pushing yourself and making yourself known, and doing videos like this, and just getting your name out there, because there are a lot of people out there who are fascinated by the paranormal, and a lot of people who do make a living out of the paranormal, especially in places like America. The Americans love anything to do with the paranormal and ghosts, and there are some really fascinating places out in America that are haunted, but you've just got to persevere and just do it because you want to do it. Don't do it because you think you might make a living out of it, because I certainly can't afford to retire just yet.
Well, that's it from Craig. We really would like to thank him for appearing on the show and for all his answers to the questions. I really do hope we get a chance to meet up with Craig in person, to do some investigations and have some adventures together. But for me, that's all I have time for today. Thanks for joining me.
Again, we'd like to say a big, big thank you to Craig. We highly recommend that you check out his website. So we'll post the link in our description. Next up, here's Fran's Spiritual World.
Crystals constantly absorb energy and pick up the vibes of everyone who handles them, so they need to be kept purified and cleansed, both before and after use. There are many ways that you can cleanse a crystal, so let's take a look at some of those now. If you are lucky enough to live near a freshwater stream, you can hold the crystals in the flowing water to cleanse them quite nicely. Stay away from salt water when it comes to your crystals, as the salt can corrode them. Rainwater collected into a jar from thunderstorms is great for cleansing your crystals. If your crystal is quite delicate or layered, it should be kept out of water altogether. Instead, you can place it in brown rice overnight or pass it through the light of a lit candle, being very careful not to burn yourself. You can also use the smoke from a smudge stick. For some people who are more spiritually aware, it can be easy to cleanse crystals through visualization. You will need to sit in a quiet space with your crystals in front of you. Open up your palm and root chakras as shown in last week's video. Close your eyes and place your hand palm downwards towards your crystals, hovering a few inches above them. Now visualize making a strong connection between your hand and either the sun or the moon, depending on what time of day it is. Think about a strong, thin ray of light coming from the sun or moon and attaching itself to the back of your hand. Then spread the light out through your palm and across the surfaces of your crystals. Do this for a couple of minutes. You will actually find the palm of your hand starts to feel warm through cleansing. After cleansing, you may feel a difference in the sensations of your crystals when you pick them up. This is perfectly normal and shows that the cleansing has worked quite well. Now let's move on to the crystal of the week. This week I have chosen turquoise. Turquoise is turquoise in colour and can look quite marbled. It's good for balancing the heart, throat and third eye chakras and is the birthstone for December. It is aligned with the zodiacs Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius and Pisces. It is a purification stone and it can dispel negative energy and can be worn to protect against outside influences or pollution. It can balance and align all the chakras, stabilises mood swings and can instill inner calm. It is excellent for depression and exhaustion. It also has the power to prevent panic attacks. So it's a great little gem. Love and light.
Thanks for that, Fran. I look forward to hearing more in next week's Spiritual World. Now, our next segment was brand new last week, and we think everybody really enjoyed it. So, I think we should take another walk down Ghostly Lane with Chris.
Welcome back to our journey down Ghostly Lane. Our next stop is our second investigation as a group. And we gained the fortune of getting in to the George and Dragon pub where we live. It's a 17th century building with a few stories to it. A dog is seen to roam up and down the halls when there should be no dog downstairs. There's said to be stories of a serving woman, seen and heard, and a tale of a bad man whose presence is often felt and sometimes heard as well. But our first night in this place proved to be very, very interesting. Accompanied by a key holder to the building, we start off with Spirit Box, attempting to make contact with whoever or whatever was there. It is evident with the responses coming through that our presence has attracted some attention. Voice of a woman, of a young girl, and a dark gentleman can be heard. This was our first investigation as a group. And the first time we pulled our tactics together. With the Spirit Box working, it wasn't long before the experiences really started to kick in. People feeling cold spots, tingling sensations on their back, and constantly looking over their shoulder one way or the other. Noises coming from the bar would cause the cameraman to keep looking down into it, only to see nothing there. But it wasn't long before the Spirit Box stopped speaking to us. So we decided to call it and move on. We attempted to ascertain if the story about the dog was true. We moved to the cellar to see if we could get some activity. At first thinking the audible sensor was malfunctioning, but quickly realizing that there was nothing wrong with it. After realizing that I was indeed getting some results, we tried to ascertain whether it was a human, or maybe was it man's best friend trying to talk to us. But eventually the results stopped coming in, and we decided to leave, to move upstairs. Quite categorically one of the most foreboding places in this building. For me, back in those days, I was in no shape, way or form in touch with any of the senses I have now, but I could still feel something dreadfully wrong with the upstairs. Myself, Jody and James briefly looking around. We set up the Echovox, continuing to attempt to see if we could use this app to get some concrete evidence. Time and again, it would pump out responses that would make us question what was going on. Still feeling ill at ease, like something was around us. We were watching and waiting. Up until now, our methods and our tactics had worked. We had got results, We had seen, felt and recorded strange things. But in our hunt for the mean old man, I'm not so sure. Using the spirit box is one thing, but using the Echovox app is quite another. Without being able to rely on what you hear, there's no guarantee that what you get is concrete. All the same, it didn't change what we felt. It didn't change the end result. Of the first night's investigation, I can only say this. We did very well as a team. Our methods were sound. We kept our calm. And we got results. But if I could go back, I think maybe I would do things a little different and a tiny bit more thorough. But nothing, and I mean nothing, would prepare us for night 2. We're back. Night 2. Just me and Jody. No key holder. We had just tried the Singapore theory, and although I tell the camera we didn't get much at all, we felt embarrassed because we had just got one of the most epic situations and failed to record it. But what comes next was astounding. Jody would record something on camera and we wouldn't realise it was there until analysis. In a moment, Jody's going to pan left and you'll see a door open fully against the wall with 2 window panels in it. And it's something in the right hand window panel that moves. We went over and over all our videos to confirm this was nothing on the wall that was simply moving as the camera did. But on closer inspection, we couldn't find any reason for it. It moves out of shot as the camera pans, but in the opposite direction. And it's going the way we're about to walk. So we took a still so everyone can see. In the right hand window pane, a shoulder and an arm and what looks like a hand. After moving from the restaurant area to the basement door, we attempted to repeat the results of the experiment we did previously to see if it would happen again. With no luck. No responses. And no movement from the dog treats we left in a specific position in the pub. And without results, it wasn't that long before we decided to pick up and move on. It was time to go upstairs, but if you'll pay attention to the wall, this is where we caught the arm, and you'll see there's nothing on the wall to make that shape. Nothing. As we moved back upstairs to a room we didn't look at before, the office. A room which is reported to have some of the most harrowing feelings of people stood behind you, breathing down your neck, watching you. Sitting in the office was quite an experience in itself. Sitting there in one room, lit up by a camera light, and the rest of the building was dark, is an experience in itself. When you know there's something there. As we attempt to use the spirit box to get intelligent responses, from time to time we notice movement, changes in pressure, an overbearing feeling, shifts in the darkness. It wouldn't be long before I would pull out my own protection to stop anything from hurting us. We continue to attempt to get more and more evidence on the spirit box. Protection in hand, I keep feeling a presence to my right. I keep feeling like something's moving around, trying to get closer. From time to time, I would hear things, noises on the spirit box, but eventually they would die. So then I turned to the Echovox once more to see if I could repeat the results I'd had on the spirit box. Now with my camera in hand pointed towards the door, so I would catch anything that was moving on camera. Sadly, nothing appeared, but the Echovox would give me something. Intelligent responses to my questions, and what sounded like a dog barking over and over again. We drew the night to a close, but this place was both a lesson in technique and courage in facing what would be waiting for us. And if I could do it again, I would split the team up into all corners of the building to see what would approach. I have more stories for you, but that's for next time on our walk down Ghostly Lane.
Wow, now that's a great memory. I really enjoyed investigating the Georgian Dragon. Yeah, as a pub that I've frequently drank in and heard many ghostly story, and tales of ghostly activity, I was thrilled to be able to get a chance to investigate there. And thanks to the owners then for letting us do it. So next up, we've got Shell in this week's Meet the Team. Welcome to this week's Meet the Team. Now this week you get to meet me. For those of you that don't know, I'm Shell.
So I am Chris's partner in crime. We've been together about 2 and a bit years now, I think. Might be longer. I joined the group a little whiles after they first started, but I think we'll all agree that it wasn't until we all sort of came together that it really started to become a thing. So yeah, within the group I do a lot of the editing, some of the planning. Between me and Chris, we sort of come up with all the ideas and plans. We sort of bounce ideas off each other, and I think we make a good team, and so anything we do eventually come up with does seem to work quite well. I also look for locations to investigate, as well as everyone else. We all sort of chip in to do that, and mainly I organise everyone for getting their content to me on time for each weekly episode of M&A TV. So I do have to do a bit of chasing, especially where Jodie's concerned, but that's never mind. So outside of the paranormal, I don't really have too many other interests. I do like reading, mainly sort of fictional things, so a bit of romance, a bit of I can't even think of the word, like supernatural romance, so vampires and werewolves and that kind of thing. I do like having people round. That's one of my big things that I enjoy. I like entertaining, so I like getting people around for barbecues or food. Obviously at the moment we can't do that, which is a shame, but I'm already planning a few get-togethers for once this is over. So a bit more about myself. I've got 2 children from a previous relationship. Gina, who is nearly 16, and Jess, who just turned 13 the other day. People say I don't look old enough to have kids that age, but I do. So I'm learning to drive currently. My driving test should have been back in April, but unfortunately due to Corona it is being cancelled, and it's now going to be sometime in August, fingers crossed. So that's me. I don't really know if there's anything else I can say about myself, to be honest. Going forward though with the team, I think I'd like us to just keep going as we are. Hopefully get a few more subscribers on YouTube just to make it that more worthwhile. I think the team's doing really well at the moment. Hopefully lockdown will be over soon and we can get out and do a load more investigations, because there are a lot of places we want to go and do, and we want to get our road trips back on. So yeah, lots of plans for the future, but we'll just take it one day at a time and see what happens. So that's me. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.
Now, hopefully you enjoyed hearing more about Shell. Next week we'll be hearing from Fran. Next up we have Ghosts in the News.
Hello, I'd like to talk to you about a news article that Shell put in my direction this week from the Daily Star. And it touches on a subject that I think we discussed in the live M&A question and answers session on Wednesday about sexual relationships with ghosts. And the headline from this story is as follows: Man dating ghost fears she's cheating on him by bonking other men during the lockdown. This is from the Daily Star. Gary Denara, 36, from New Jersey, USA, has been worried about his unconventional relationship. Why have a normal relationship, guys, when you can have a paranormal one? Gary and Lisa have been together for over 2 years. But their relationship is now in the rocks as he feels that Lisa may be unfaithful. For the first month of the lockdown, Gary, who is unemployed, said they were inseparable. They enjoyed plenty of sex and intimacy, and he is quoted as saying, "I'm by nature a very anxious person. On top of not being able to see my family and nieces, I was feeling very afraid. I'm usually the strong one in the relationship. But I was just too overwhelmed to hold it together. In that month, Lisa was my rock. She'd help me cook and fold laundry, watch loads of TV, and obviously have sex all the time. It was fun but exhausting. I'm not in great shape, so it was hard to keep up. Being on strict lockdown, we had to find creative ways to be sexually adventurous. Things soon began to change, and Lisa hadn't been sticking to the lockdown rules. I'm guessing, though, that ghosts can't really carry the virus. Maybe tests need to be done there." He's also quoted as saying, "This past month, she's out all the time. Never tells me where she's going, just says she's out with friends. She could be anywhere with anyone, and I've always felt secure in our relationship, but lately we haven't been having much sex. I'm worried she's cheating on me. She says I'm being paranoid. I mean, I'm not crazy, am I? It just doesn't make sense. I can understand wanting space, but something just feels off. Occasionally, I FaceTime my best friend Chris, and he thinks cabin fever is making me paranoid. He says it's obvious how much Lisa loves me. Everyone can see it." Can they though? He told the Daily Star he had made plans with Lisa to celebrate his upcoming birthday. "We plan to have a Star Wars and sex marathon." Surprisingly, this isn't the first time Gary has spilled the beans to the Daily Star about his relationship. Back in February, the story headline was, "Man to have threesome with 2 ghosts for kinky Valentine's Day paranormal sex. Lucky Gary." According to the report, Lisa was inviting her spirit friend Sadie to join them for the night. This wasn't even the first report that involved Gary talking about his unusual relationship with Lisa. Back in October last year, the story reads, "Man describes amazing sex life with ghost he's been dating for 2 years. He appeared again in December. Man in relationship with ghost explains how they're getting in to the Christmas spirit." It all seems a little too good to be true, doesn't it? Because it is. For the reality of things, Gary isn't in a relationship with a ghost called Lisa. He isn't even American. He's definitely not from New Jersey. He's a British comedian. And he has been fooling the media now for what looks like the space of 18 months, full of stories of his loving relationship with Lisa. And I have to say, it's one of those things, really, the newspaper reporters should be doing their research properly. If they had of, like I did, took me like probably less than 3 minutes on Google to actually find the truth about Gary. You've only got to search his name. And you will find, yep, he is a British comedian He's been trolling the media with a story which started off with a clickbait YouTube video. He literally did a comedy sketch about being in a sexual relationship with a ghost. The media has watched probably 2 seconds of it, not watched the full thing, has presumed he is in a relationship or thinks he's in a sexual relationship with a ghost, and then the stories have appeared. And he's just been going along with it. And he's actually quoted as saying, if they watched more than 2 seconds, they'd know it was a sketch. Well played, Gary, for keeping the media fooled for so long. I hope they start doing better research on these things, because as funny as this may be, it does make a mockery of the paranormal world and those that are actually serious about doing serious investigations. So, yeah, I mean, if anyone has any stories that they think might actually be genuine, of people that genuinely believe that they are having relationships with ghosts, please do send them to us. And I will do as I have with Gary's story and see as much as I can whether I think they are genuine or whether we're having our legs pulled. In this case, Gary has well and truly been pulling our legs, and especially the legs of the Daily Star. Thank you. Love and light.
So that was Ghosts in the News. Last week's Paranormal Chat, we had several teams telling us their stories and of missed evidence or what they heard or saw with their own eyes but didn't catch on camera. Or had other, or with other equipment rolling. Joanne of Birmingham Ghost Hunters was unable to get a response here in time, but we have it now. Let's take a look at her response.
Hello M&A TV, thanks for nominating us to take part in this week's Paranormal Question and Answers. Let me introduce myself. My name is Joanne Clare. I'm the lead investigator for Birmingham Ghost Hunters. Your nominated question is, have I ever been at a location and had something brilliant happen? E.g. saw a figure, heard something, saw something move, or anything unexplainable, but you didn't have the cameras rolling at the time, and so potentially you miss recording a great piece of evidence. Well, actually, yes. On 2 occasions, I've had this happen to me, mainly at East Drive. After constant asking in the bedroom for the door to close in the parents' room, I didn't think it would happen. When we was asking at the time, after 5 seconds it flew shut. Was gutted, as I had never really witnessed a door close like that, and wanted it for so long, and the minute it actually happened I had no evidence of it. So yeah, I was a little bit gutted with that. On another occasion, it was another visit to East Drive. I was there on a full lockdown. It was about 5 AM. We was literally hanging with tiredness. I was sitting on the sofa, half falling asleep. I suddenly had the urge to open my eyes, and I looked directly at the lampshade to see something I can't get my head round to this day. There was what looked like black tar liquid coming from the light. Before I could even blink, something was in my face. I woke everyone up with my reaction. I honestly couldn't think at that time to get my camera out. It completely stunned me. Even now I can't believe what I saw, and have never seen it there like that ever again. So yeah, that's my question and answers for you this week. I hope it was okay for you. God bless, take care, and thanks for watching.
Thanks so much for joining us this week, guys. We'll be back same time next week at 8 o'clock. Well, I can't say stay safe anymore, so I'm going to be saying keep alert, because we need more alerts. Sorry, bad joke. Yeah, we need to, stay safe. I say stay safe still. We've got a long road to go, so, but enjoy the little bit more freedom that we've got. So, see you next week, guys, and thanks so much for joining us. Good night.